Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our fifth webinar. Today, we are joined by Doreen Biira, who's a media personality, and Fred Obachi, Machoka, a veteran broadcaster. On to our first guest, Doreen Biira. Doreen Biira is a media personality, strategic communicator, moderator, speaker, and content curator. She has a media training with over 10 years experience in television, radio, print, and digital media. She has practiced journalism across East Africa. She is a contributor to DW Business Africa. She has worked as the advisor, strategic communication at the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining in Kenya. She has worked at KTN as a news anchor, reporter, and content producer. Joy has also worked in Uganda as a television and radio broadcaster, voice-over artist, events moderator, and speaker. In 2018, Joy was named among the most influential business journalists globally. Joy has a bachelor's degree in information technology from Makerere University. Welcome, Joy. Doreen Biira, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. John Ndavula. Hi, everyone. It's good to be talking to you. You know, when you hear yourself being introduced, sometimes you wonder, is that me? Is that me they're talking about? So the legend here, I think, happens to be Fred. That's not me. I don't think I'm there yet. I'm not yet a legend. I'm probably on the way there, but it's good to be speaking to you all. So where do I begin? Succeeding in the broadcast industry. Maybe I'll start by asking a question. When you look at the personalities that you look up to on television, what qualities do you admire about them the most? And it's from getting those answers or pointing out what exactly it is that you admire about them that you're able to figure out what the qualities are to successful broadcast journalism or a successful broadcast career.
So my career in journalism started in 2008, but it started either as a joke or we could call that also God's plan. I accompanied a friend of mine to go do auditions at a TV station. And while I waited for him in the hallway, someone came and insisted that I go into the audition room and say my name, if that's the only thing I will have to say that day. So I went up there, said my names, and they asked so many questions like, what would you like to do on TV? And I was very blunt. I said, you know what? I don't think TV is my thing. I don't think I have the face for it. I don't think I have the mind for it. And I said all these things just like a typical university student would respond to, in the moment, not very important questions. But then they asked the question, what would you like to see on TV if you were to watch TV? So because I was an evening student at that time, I said, I wish I could watch in the morning what I would miss out on in the evening. I'd want to know what's making news. I would want to know what's in the newspapers because I don't have the time to go buy a newspaper on the streets. So I want to see what's making news in the papers. I want to hear what people are saying on the streets about the stories that are making headlines. But I didn't know that even as I gave these responses, I was actually speaking like a journalist. I was talking about newspaper reviews. I was talking about vox pops. I was talking about, the news headlines and reviews and all of that and analysis. It's just that I didn't have the journalistic term for it. And so it also so happened that I am possibly the only person who was auditioned that day who gave those kinds of responses. And I was called back the next day and I was asked to take a CV. Guys, I didn't even have a CV. Let's just be honest. I didn't have a CV. The only thing on my CV were my names and I guess a few research that I had done, some research work that I had done before I joined university. And then at the time I was a merchandiser. So when I called and asked for a CV, I said, I don't have a CV, but I'm going to bring whatever it is that I think I've done. And I went back with this piece of paper in my hand, and it was a one-pager, a CV that was one-pager. I don't think it even went all the way down to the end of an A4 paper, but I took it anyway, and I went with it. So they gave me a template and said, can you fill out this information? And the template I was given was a morning show template. So my job was to enter, good morning, welcome to the show, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, that was the beginning of my TV career. And it was hard because I remember my first day on television like it was a nightmare. I was trained for 2 weeks, but I didn't think that for someone who has gone to school for something like this for maybe 3-4 years, I've only been given a maximum of a month. And so I'm supposed to present like I have been in the industry for a long time. And so my first day on air was just a typical nightmare. I did the newspaper review, and I think I even held the newspaper upside down because I was so tense. I was so nervous. I didn't know what the audience was going to think of my presentation. It was like a whole embarrassing moment that if somebody showed me the video today, I'll probably not want to watch it. But I remember it very vividly. And so my co-host had 6 years experience in the media. So you can imagine who they were pairing him with. I felt like an amateur. But then he was probably the best co-host I could ever have had at the time, because while he bashed me for all the wrong things that I did, he was kind enough to show me that, you know what, this is how you do it. That's not how you do it, and this is how you do it. And so I would say the first thing that you need to succeed in a broadcast career is the will to learn. Always be willing to learn. No matter how knowledgeable you think you are, I think learning never ends in the broadcast media. I learned from that moment on, I started to realize the platform I had been given. And so for me, it became more like I have to live up to what is expected of me. And so for all the journalistic trainings that ever existed, I think I attended all of them, from data journalism to investigative journalism to business journalism, all the trainings that ever existed that had something to do with journalistic training. I attended all of them. And it took about maybe a year for me to now comprehend what broadcast journalism was all about. I was trained by people on the job. And I think one of the factors, or one of the key positives that I had, was just that will to learn. Every time the technical people in the broadcast media house that I used to work with, you know, got a question from me, they were very willing to explain it to me right from scratch. So it kind of felt like I was doing internship, but then at the same time being on air. And that in itself was one of the best lessons I have ever gotten in my broadcast career. You have also heard me mention that I took up all manner of trainings that I ever came across in my career. I took them up because they helped me know where my strengths are. Then I started figuring out that I am a good data grasper. I can easily interpret data and turn it into a story. And so that could have indirectly been the beginning of me nurturing my business journalistic side. And also I'm able to sift through investigative information and know exactly where information is wrong, where it's right, and where I need to dig deeper and get information out of. That in itself helped me a lot. So A, the will to learn, and B, I would say training. C would have to be upgrading of skills. Now, I was an information technology student or graduate, and that technology side of things helped me a whole great deal, because if there was ever a student who used Google more than anyone else in my class, it possibly had to be me. Because I was doing information technology while at the same time working on television. So for everything that I did not understand, my first go-to platform was Google. How to be a good interviewer, how to be a good reporter, how to be a good presenter, how to communicate better, everything literally, above and beyond the fact that I asked questions to my lecturers, to my bosses, my supervisors. I went ahead and did some reading. So it's very important for you as a student of journalism, or if you want to succeed in broadcast journalism, is that you have to continuously upgrade your skills. So I had to figure out, how do I become a good broadcaster? My voice needed training, and so I had to read about vocal training for my voice, the things I need to do before I get on the air for my voice. If it's sugar, before how long before I go on air should I have taken sugar? If it's by 6 p.m., then after 6 p.m., I don't take sugar, because I know by the time I get on the air at 9, my voice is going to be compromised, either because of the sugar that's still lying somewhere in my throat or something. So basic things like that. But it also went deeper into me knowing what editing skills I needed for me to be able to make my work flawless. So Final Cut, Adobe Design, and today now we have all these graphics platforms or graphic sites that help you advance and improve your graphics design skills, like Canva, like freepick.com. So you can go on there and always keep upgrading your skills. And then the final thing I would say is relationships and networks. When you start a career in broadcast journalism, I think it's very important that from the moment you get into this career, you understand that stories will not always come to you. Sometimes you have to go out there and look for the stories. And you cannot look for the stories if you haven't built good networks, if you haven't built good relationships. Because the people you meet in society, it could be in an informal settlement, it could be on the bus or on a mat on your way to town. It could be anyone. Anyone can become a story. Anyone can connect you to a story. And so it's very important for you to build relationships and expand your networks, because it's from there that you're going to get some of the most important stories, that you can tell some of the most touching stories in your career. And not just that, today we have the advantage of the internet. And so the internet allows us to sort of even get in touch with our mentors. There are people we look up to, our role models. Some people will say, if I was to ask a question today, who is your role model? You would talk of people like Oprah, you talk of people like Christiana Manpour, or you could talk about Richard Quest, whoever they are, or maybe Rick Dees or Fred Machoka, you know, but then you do not have his phone number, but you know he's on Twitter and he's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, and you can get in touch with him there. And the beauty about the world we live in now is that technology has brought this big world into our hands, into our devices. And with that, we have to take advantage of that platform as a technology world, that we now know we can reach out to the people we look up to, seek mentorship from the people we look up to, and ask questions. I don't know if you can be able to have a successful broadcast career if you do not ask questions. From the most useless questions to the most important questions, it's important for you to ask questions, because as long as you doubt your mind, as long as you doubt your own responses, it means that there's something that you have not understood about a certain subject or about a certain topic. And finally, I think it's very key for us to guard our integrity. In a broadcast career, there is so many temptations that could easily throw you off your career. And so your integrity is very important. You have to learn to guard it like it was your own, like it's what your reputation actually lies on. When it comes to doing stories, many times you will find yourself in a position where people are saying, let's offer you some money so you can compromise a story. Let's offer you some money so you can keep silent about highlighting a certain story in a certain area. It could be cases to do with corruption, it could be investigation, it could be whatever. But I think that there's no career that tries your integrity like journalism, like broadcast journalism. It could be a radio show, because some people are paid to say all manner of things about certain personalities with the hope of getting money at the end of the day. So what does your integrity mean to you? For me, it means everything. If somebody watches me on the air and another person says, can you believe it that so and so asked me for money to be interviewed on her show? And I don't think that would sit well with me. And because I feel like at the end of the day, my job is to tell stories truthfully and in a manner in which they can be appreciated by the people who are receiving or consuming the information. And so for me, I think those are the key or the main key things to a successful broadcast career. But I'm sure the legend Fred Machoka has more to ask or more to say about a successful broadcast media career. So I think my 20 minutes are up or not. If they're not, but I think that I've possibly summarized it all in I think 15 minutes. And before I even wind up, let me just say this, Dr. John Ndavula, if you'd allow me to. I think that also as you grow in your broadcast career, it's also important for you to expand your skills. Don't just upgrade them, but expand them. I started out as a TV journalist or a TV presenter, and then I got into radio. And after radio, that's when I started emceeing at events. And then I grew my skills to also moderating topical events. So my very first event, I even thought it was just going to be a free of charge event. I never ever thought that people are paid to moderate or speak at events. I just thought they always source out for people and be like, hey, we know you're on TV, so can you come talk about this? But the very first time I spoke at an event, it was a women's summit. And so I'd been invited to talk about women in the media and how they can use technology to succeed. And this was, I think, back in 2010. And so I went to Ghana. I spoke for, I think, less than an hour, if I recall. And later on, I think when I was leaving for the airport, after 3 days, I was told, here, we actually have something for you. And it was a check of, I think, $2,000, $2,200. And so I feel that broadcast is a very good career if you know what you want, if you figure out where your interests are, and above and beyond, if you can, in addition to being a jack of all trades, have something that you're really good at, that every time they think of someone who can integrate technology in their work, it could be you that they're thinking about. Every time they think about a data journalist, it should be you that they're thinking about. So I think that I, over time, grew a career that allowed me to be able to flexibly succeed at my career. And I have never stopped doing the things that I did back in the day when my career had started. I've never stopped learning. I've never stopped upgrading my skills. I've never stopped expanding my networks. I have never stopped also trying as much as possible to expand my skills in terms of doing and learning other things that could help me out gain a successful career. So I think that pretty much sums it up for me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Joy Doreen Biira. That was quite insightful. And Joy actually hosts several webinars on Instagram, and I think it's twice a week. So you can follow her on Instagram, and some of the webinars she's hosting are very, very useful, especially to us upcoming journalists. Now, remember, if you have a question to either of our guests, make sure you type in the chat section and we'll come back to your questions later on. Also, remember to tweet us at hashtag SPU Career Talk. We have a couple of guests who've joined us. I can see several alumni of St. Paul's University who've joined us. People like Ruben, thank you for joining. Agnes Ngugi, all the way from Germany. Asante Sana. My colleagues at the Department of Communication I can see Dr. Chongombe. I've seen Ida and others. Welcome. Y254 TV station is also here with us, and also participants from the Network for Media and PR Women in Kenya. Now, on to our second guest. I know you are very eager and waiting to hear from him. Now, when I was growing up, I loved listening to the radio a lot. One of the constant radio voices I grew up with was that of Fred Obachi, Machoka, a true legend. I remember his programs like Sanyo Ju, Sanyo Tops, Ever Ready, Paka Power Show, and Music Time. And I can't even begin to talk about how much trouble we went through just to watch Music Time on TV as kids. I used to look forward to his signature introduction, the blackest man in Black Africa. And mind you, that is north of Limpopo and south of Sahara, or the retired G for retired general. Now, last year, I met Fred at his farm, Fred's Ranch in Isinya. We had gone to shoot a video for the Living Legends series. I must say, I found Uncle Fred very humble, very engaging, very lively, and I learned so much from him. Today, it is the turn of our students to learn from the legend himself. Having been in the industry for so many years, some of the questions Uncle Fred will be answering are, how can we succeed in media? How do we deal with criticism? Is there enough space in media for all of us? And so on. So, karibu sana, Uncle Fred.
Thank you, Daktari. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm privileged to be on this platform. Like I told you, Daktari, I am not that digital savvy, so I've got my grandson here who is assisting me with the gadgets so that I can be able to talk to you guys. My name is Fred Obachi Machoka, as you have been told, the blackest man in Black Africa. And I have been on radio for about 44 years, which is probably more than some of the people listening to me this afternoon. I started, or rather, I held my first microphone around December 1976, when there was only one radio and TV station called Voice of Kenya, or VOK. And I literally stumbled into the world of broadcasting because that was not my first love. My first love was holding a gun, because after high school, I joined the forces. I was in the police force with the GSU, serving in the Northern Frontier District, then called NFD, which is now referred to as Northeastern Province. And I participated in a radio competition through writing. I wanted to win a prize because there was a radio competition, and that radio show was known as Sanyo Ju, Sanyo Tops. So that time there were no phones except landlines, and only few people were privileged to have telephones. Those were ministers and above. But anybody participating in a radio competition, you had to write a letter, and then you go to the post office, buy a stamp, and then buy an envelope also, and then send your letter, which could take about 2 months to arrive at the final destination. When it arrives in Voice of Kenya, then it is analyzed, and then it is after that that you are announced. Lucky to be announced as a winner in a radio competition. And when I was my radio, the producer of that particular show called Sanyo Ju, Sanyo Tops, as we were talking, thought I had a good voice for broadcasting. And that is how he asked me if I could be interested in broadcasting. I said, boss, I'm in the forces. How can I be a broadcaster at the same time? Then he indicated that we could record a radio insert, and then I could get paid for it. And as you know, money moves mountains. When I heard that I could be paid for it and be paid well, I said I wouldn't mind. And so I started doing a 5 minutes radio show within that Sanyo Juice, Sanyo Tops radio program, which was 30 minutes. But that was a recorded version for people called signalers. And I was trained in the forces in communication. So I was a signaler. And then the guy used that as an endorsement to tell people that if you're a signaler, then you know what is good, what is the right brand of radio to buy. And Fred Obachi Machoka, as a signaler from the forces, I was used to endorse Sanyo radios for sale. And that is how I got into broadcasting. Later on, when I realized that I was just being used as a voice, I decided to go back to school and learn something to do with advertising and sales promotion and public relations. So I went back to college, and that is how I ended up now being a pro in the industry. That is just the brief of it, because if I start talking about my background, it might take quite a while. So from the one radio station then in 1976 to now 360 radio stations as at January 2020. That is how far we have come in the media industry. From one TV channel to 66 and still rising. And then, of course, that is minus DSTV and the affiliates, which are about 483 licensed already. So we got quite a liberalized medium of communication. We also have 44, I think, 44 print media newspapers and about 62 magazines. So that is media. But then there is the media that you hold, the radio channel that you hold in form of your phone. Having told you that, radio is still king in the media, and radio is about 67% of the total media consumption. So in a nutshell, that is what media is as at now. Now, when Jackie asked me and Daktari to come to this webinar, I didn't know really what to say, because I'm neither a teacher nor an organized media guy. And even when Jackie asked me, how do we profile you? I said, tell them it is just a guy, a Roomba guy. That is me. That's what I do. I entertain people. That's what I've been doing for 44 years. I play music and people listen and dance to that music. I have done so many radio shows in my life. They are in 10s and 20s. But the most memorable shows that I've done was that Sanyo Juice, Sanyo Tops radio show, which I did present for more than 20 years. I also presented a radio show called Ugua Pole Nalukozed. This is a radio show that is very, very special to me, because it used to entail going to hospitals, talking to patients, and giving them a chance to send greetings to their loved ones back home. And this was at a time when patients were more or less neglected. So if you have been If you have fallen sick at one time and had been admitted to hospital, imagine a guy coming to you and talking to you by your hospital bed and giving you a chance to talk to your relatives back home. And then he gives you a gift, sort of, in form of a bottle of Lucozade and a t-shirt and a get well card. This is what I was doing. It enabled me to go all over the country, visiting patients in various hospitals, from Vanga down in Kwale to Mandera to Marsabit to Migori, everywhere. Now, I was also asked to talk about mentorship, and that is where I want to drill in. Mentorship, in my opinion, is like courtship. So if you want to be mentored, you must be willing yourself to take the first step. You must recognize who is your role model. Who is it that you can go to and talk to? And why is it that you want to go to that specific person to talk to him or her about mentorship? Once you identify your target, then you approach that target and say, hey, Joy, Doreen, Biira, I love the way you present news. I love your demeanor. I think you're a great person. Will you mind spending a few moments of your valuable time to tell me how to navigate my way in the industry? If you do that, most people stop and, help you out. Yeah. So if you approached your target and asked for assistance, most people will do that. But if you get into the industry and you think you're by appearing perhaps on one popular show and maybe being profiled on what can I one of these newspapers that sort of talk about media personalities. If you appear once and then you think you have already become a celeb, because that word is overused, overrated, and it really doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, then you lose it. Your career dies at inception. A lot of people in the media become celebs even before they can get to be known. And like I told you, there are over 360 radio stations. So you get to be heard on one, and you think automatically the entire world is listening to you. A mistake. So it is important to realize that being in the media is no different from being an askari at the gate. It's no different from being a chef. It's no different from being a guy who prunes flowers at some farm. We are all doing a job, all right? It's just that one job then exposes you to more people than another. And like Joy, Doreen, and Biira talked or said, sometimes when you get into the media, you rub shoulders with very, very, very important people. The people you watch on TV, the who is who. And sometimes if you don't take care, you might think that you are one of those. That because you interview the president of the Republic of Kenya, you are a president of sorts. Just because you interview governor so-and-so, you start thinking you are like that governor. And when that happens, you start frequenting the bars and hotels and restaurants where those governors go. And when those governors are spending money that is public fund, you are spending your salary, and you think because you are seated across the table with an with a member of parliament, you think you are just at the same level. You are not. Then before you know it, you are fired because of a few things that happen along the line. And then the phone calls that you used to get, going to Citizen Radio or TV or Nation or KTN or K24, all of a sudden there are no phone calls coming in, because those phone calls were not coming to Fred Machoka, the person. They were coming to Fred Machoka of Citizen Radio or TV. And then that is when you realize kwa ground vitu ni different vile wanasema. So it is very important for those who have already come into the media world to understand that. For you, the student, because I was informed talking to St. Paul's University, you're sitting there and you want to join the media. But in your mind, it is important to ask yourself before you join the media, why is it that you want to join the media? For me, Fred Machoka, I'm in the media because I loved it from day one, other than the money. Now I don't do it for the money per se. I love the money. The money is good, but I'm not doing it for money per se. I'm actually in the media because I love that microphone. I can pay my employer to give me a chance to hold that microphone because there is a connection that I've had between my audience and myself that is almost infectious. So I live with that. I've got so much passion that when I hold that microphone, people think I'm drunk already, but I'm drunk from seeing that microphone. So you must ask yourself, do you really want to go into the media? And if you are going to join the media, some of you are already looking at that media. And when I ask some people, they say, I want to be a TV anchor. Now, that's quite a challenge. You don't just become an anchor. If you are lucky, sometimes you do, but you don't just walk in and become a TV news anchor. You can work towards it, but it is not, you move from college and you automatically become a news anchor. So when you want to join the media, some of you are already looking at, I want to join Citizen, KTN, NTV, K24, and KBC. And then it's like you want to start at the top because those are the leading media houses. But I would suggest that before you join the media, you should analyze what is media. Once you get that, then you must also understand that you may have to be forced to start at the bottom and move your way, or try and climb up to get to be the Jeff Koinange or somebody up there at the top. But to do that, you must think of content, because we have now moved from where you just zamani for those, before, during our time. There were the editors, there were the reporters who collect everything, and it is, the bulletin is really, it comes from the field, it goes through the sub-editors to the editors to the editor-in-chief. By the time it finally, or the news editor, by the time it lands on the news reader, is really a question of looking at the written thing and reading. But these days, that news reporter is not just a news reporter, it's a content provider. You got to have content. And that is the direction we are getting to. You must create content yourself. In the digital world, I think that is the way to go. And if you look at, what is the name of that girl? I think who was Aziad, the girl who danced and sang on TikTok and did that thing called Utawezana, something like that. She created her own content. She now is generating enough revenue to rival some of the most established TV channels. So I think as a student, that is your beginning. You go to your phone, you can access YouTube, you can access Viusasa, you can access TikTok, you can participate in that. I think that is the way to go right now. And then slowly you climb up the ladder, and God willing, you can use all these apps and make yourself not only a celebrity, but also be able to make some money, like that girl Aziad who did Utawezana. I don't advocate for ranches, some stuff that is not very palatable. But I just think that there is so much to pick from ordinary life, and you can convert that into content that people can consume. That is where I will encourage the young, graduates to start from, because the media is almost saturated. And also think of these other 300 plus radio stations and TV channels that are not very well known, but you can make them to be well known. If I remember when I joined Citizen Radio, in fact, they had a problem. Citizen TV was even not featuring anywhere. I remember they were broadcasting their news at 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. because they did not want to compete with KBC, NTV, or even KTN. They were really nowhere. And so you had to catch Citizen TV at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. if you missed the 7 o'clock news or the 9 p.m. news. And they worked their way up. We joined in and pushed the radio station to the #1 slot where it is today. That time you could be on air without even knowing you're on air. You could be off air for 30 minutes and you're talking to yourself, because they didn't even have the right gadgets then. But right now, they are the #1 radio station. So never feel ashamed to start at the bottom and climb up. I think I am done, unless there is something else that there is a question or anything.
Thank you, Uncle Fred. You have proved once again that you are a perennial well of wisdom, and we are happy to drink from your well time and again. Asante. Now, remember, you can still tweet us at #SPU Career Talk. I can see there's some questions on the chat, and we'll go there in a while. I'd like to recognize a few other participants who've joined us. I can see my dean, Dr. John Muhoho, has joined us. Karibu sana. My colleagues at the department, Susan Mwangi, and I've also seen Mary Kibuine, who's a colleague too, who is very ardent. And I can see from the chat, she has a comment. She's saying, very exciting to have you in our institution. As Dr. Ndavula said, it's great to reflect on your journey as I grew up. Every time I sit to see you on Roomba on Saturday, I just marvel at the way you have adapted and kept up with all the changes and yet remained relevant. We celebrate you, Uncle Fred. You are a hero to very many of us. I can also see Bramwell is saying, Roga Roga it is, happy to be here. Okay, now let's turn to some of the questions. There's one question which is directed to Joy. Victor Kiplagat asks, how do you become knowledgeable in your beat? For example, he's saying if you're interested in fashion or business or sports, how do you entrench yourself in these areas? And he has a follow-up question because he's asking, do you focus on what you love, or you just go to a media house and whatever roles you are assigned, whatever beat you are assigned, then that becomes your beat? I don't know if Joy, you'd like to take that.
Yeah, so usually, is there a clear-cut boundary in journalism on when to inform and when to entertain? Or is that, I think that's a question that would be best answered by Fred, but the question about the strengths and skills that make a presenter very knowledgeable in an area like fashion, business, or sports journalism, do you major in one and leave the other? So I think that by the time you get into a media house, either for internship or employed as a reporter, one of the questions you will be asked by your supervisor or your editor is, what are your interests? What are your interests? And usually you'll say things like, my interests are in Pan-African stories, or my interests are in fashion or business or sports. Now, when they identify where those interests of yours are, they'll normally attempt to give you a story to do. And when you do the story, the editor will look at the story and gauge, based on that, gauge if you know what you're talking about, one, if you're passionate about what you're writing, two, and if you can consistently deliver on that content from time to time. So today you might say, you know what, I'm passionate about fashion. And then the editor says, okay, go bring me some 6 story ideas about fashion that you'd want to write about. But when you start writing them out, you can only come up with 2. Then you need to ask yourself a question about, am I really passionate about fashion, or I just like fashion? Am I passionate about sports, or I just like sports? Am I passionate about business journalism, or just like to read business stories? So there's that weighing of your options that you have to consider. I also think that when you get into a media house, sometimes you just get it as an intern and they'll tell you something like, oh, get a camera, go to the field with Joy Doreen because she's going to cover story ABC. And then tomorrow they'll tell you, carry your camera, go to the field, you're going with the legend, Fred Machoka. And then the next day, you know, you'll go with someone else. So it's based on you shadowing these personalities or these reporters and anchors and presenters that you get to figure out if you're capable of doing those stories or not, if you're better off at human interest stories or at political angled stories. So that passion has to come from you. By the time you get into a media house, the very first question you'll be asked is, what are you good at? What are your interests? And based on that, they can figure out where exactly they want to place you. But I think it's also an opportunity for you to now put your best foot forward. If they say, what are your interests? And you feel like you're very good at business journalism, put out all the stories, the story ideas. I want to do a story about the Jokali sector, the informal sector in the country. I want to do a story about the state of our roads in the country. I want to do a story about the manufacturing sector. I want to do a story about horticulture or floriculture. I want to do a story about, you know, so then now you're beaming with ideas, but then you also need the news sources. It's not just a matter of coming up with story ideas. You also need to know who to go to, who to call for you to be able to do a balanced story, because you can't go to the field and say, I want to do a story about fashion, about Kenyan fashion designers, and you only want to talk to one fashion designer. What about the other people who do not like Kenyan fashion? Have you thought out their opinion on why they do not like Kenyan fashion designers? What about where they source their fabric? Is it locally sourced or is it internationally sourced? And what are the preferences? Why do people prefer imported products as opposed to Kenyan-made products? So you have to do balanced stories for the editor to also look at your story and say, you know what? I think this reporter knows what they're doing. You have to impress them for them to be able to come back to you and say, from the story you did last time, I think this is where your strength is. So keep at it, go on and do it. Yeah, and that's how you identify your strengths. That's how you stick to the things that you do. But specializing in business or in sports or in fashion doesn't mean that you cannot do other stories, because sometimes you'll be asked to do unconventional stories, or sometimes stories that you would not do on a daily basis. So you have to be skilled enough also to know how to do those stories, but at the same time, willing to learn. If the story is too heavy for you to do, by the way, it's normal for you to say, you know what, I think Fred would handle this story better than I, because I think he's more experienced in this field, and I can only do this story based on the help that I would get from Fred. So be honest enough to say when you cannot handle certain things, and be honest enough to say it when you're better at something than something else. Yeah, that's how I put it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've answered that very, very well. Now, Fred, there's a question from Victor Kiplagat who's asking, when, as a young journalist, when do you know when to inform and when to entertain? You know, because I know that's an area you've done very well. So do you mix entertainment with information? I don't know how you handle that. How do you put it, that kind of mix?
As a young journalist, first, if you allow me, I'd like to just touch on what Joy has mentioned over there. Once you join a media house, sometimes you may not get what you want. You could be in a totally different department from what you really love doing. You could be even on the digital platform. You could be just doing production, but you want to be on the front line. You want to be a sports anchor. You want to be an entertainer like me. But that becomes the platform for you now to move to any other department that you want. You must be willing to be patient so that you can get to learn. And sometimes you don't even get received well. There are some of us in the industry, you may look at you and just start worrying, they have brought this one to take over from me. You know, she might just cause problems. And so we want you to fail so that you can go to wherever you came from. The people have different ways of receiving young people into the team. And so you got to try very much to do your thing, even at home. Sit with people who don't even like you. Never sit with people who always tell you, you are the best. Sauti yako, noma. You know, when you are on that, you know, when I see you on TV, I know you are the best. You know, those are wasting your time. It's good for people to congratulate you, but people who are perpetually congratulating you are not helping you. You must sit with people who sometimes look at you and say, that show was, I didn't feel it, you know, that kind of thing. And they explain to you, why is it that they did not feel you when you thought you were doing your best? So that is very important. You must. For me, I've learned a lot from my audience. Every time people criticize me, some think that they are making me upset. I have to analyze what kind of criticism came through, what is it that they want, and if it makes sense, I work on it. So you have to avoid two people: those who love you so much that they will never see anything wrong with you, and those who hate you so much they'll never see anything right. So they are just downright haters. They really don't want you to be anywhere near that TV or near that radio. Those are helpless, just like the ones who love you too much are almost helpless too. For you to know whether you want to inform or entertain, really there are three pillars. That is in broadcasting, that is entertaining, information, and education. Personally, I have to do a bit of research, and I encourage anybody who wants to get into this world or this media world to do a lot of research before the main day when you are doing your radio show or TV show. Because if you don't do research, then whatever else you're giving to the people doesn't make sense. So I want to use me as the example. I have a Rumba show called Roga Roga on Radio Citizen every Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 1. Then I have the TV show on Citizen TV on Saturday from 2 to 3. And they are entertainment shows. I find it not complete if I just entertain you without telling you something that can help you as a human being, something that you take away other than the music which you can, which you can find on YouTube and Viewsas and elsewhere. I have you as a captive audience. So when you're listening to me, as you love the music that I play, that I select, first, I select my music throughout the week. So I'm on duty looking for the kind of music that you have to listen to throughout the week. But I also see things that happen around, things that are of social benefit to you, my viewer, my listener. So knowing that I have you as a captive audience, then I use that to educate you, to inform you. And I hope that way I help you relax a little bit more and take something home, even if it is something about planting trees.
Asante sana, Fred. Now, maybe as we just wind up, maybe Joy, Doreen, if you could just, maybe your final words in just a sentence or two, then we'll come back to Fred to finish it off.
Thank you all for listening and for asking all these interesting questions that I'm seeing in the chat box. Yeah. I'm seeing, well, I hope I've responded to your questions, Esther Masai and Spacey Odhiambo, as well as Victor, and I think it's Jacqueline, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But I just want to say that, you know what, if you are studying journalism, and just last week, a 17-year-old sent me a message or an email and said that there are people who are discouraging her from pursuing a career or a profession in media and communications, or journalism for that matter, because they think that it has no future. So this is my advice to everyone who is pursuing journalism as your first degree. It's just as important as any other career. I guess as important as medicine would be, because everyone is passionate about something. And if you're passionate about journalism, I think that you should keep at it, keep doing it. Yes, there are no jobs, but there are no jobs literally everywhere. I just think that what now we need to do going forward is to put your best foot forward. There's so many platforms today that are existent that were never existent, let's say when I was starting out in my career, or when Fred was starting out in his career. What you have today is the power of technology. And with the power of technology, you can be your own media house. You can generate your own income. You just need to figure out how exactly you're going to put it out there for people to be able to read it, and read it that it sticks in their minds and it's able to be reshared. There's nothing you can't do. I think that if you know where you want to go, if you know where your passion is, look out for the information that is going to enhance that passion, that is going to enhance that skill that you have. Expand your networks. I'm going to insist on this one, expand your networks, because it's from networks that sometimes we get to meet the people that we never thought we'd ever meet. And that's where we get all the recommendations from. I would also say be intentional about the content that you put out on your social media platforms. Some of us are very talented while even going through our university education. We're very talented, but all we ever see on your social media platforms are pictures of you either doing something that's completely different from what exactly you're passionate about. So be intentional with your social media platforms. There's LinkedIn where you can connect with so many professionals. There's Twitter where you can link up intellectually with so many people and different conversations that are going on there. There's Instagram where you can also connect to the people that you look up to. There's Facebook as well, and all these other platforms. I guess now there's TikTok, and there are blogs that you can start and vlogs that you can start on YouTube that can help you put out the stuff that you're passionate about. And who knows, somebody just might pick out some of the content that you have, and before you know it, it could actually land you the opportunity that you've always been looking out for. So never give up on your passion. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Fred, your last words?
My last words is really thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to my children, because most of the people on this platform are that age. Research shows that the future of broadcasting is in the hands of ladies because they use the phone more. They appreciate being on the digital platform. So I encourage men also to try and be on the digital platform more and get to learn what's going on there, because we are really not going to avoid being on the digital platform. That is why I struggle sometimes, but I get to do my stuff. The other thing is, if you really want to be in the media, then don't look down upon certain things. For example, the vernacular radio stations in Oro, for example, and others are huge, so don't just think that you got to speak good English and good Swahili and that is it. Also delve into these other areas where, there is opportunity to speak Kimeru, speak Kikusi, Kijaluo, Kikuyu, and be perfect at it. You might be surprised how much money you can make in that area. The media doesn't, take people because they are relatives of media owners, or they are relatives of big, who is who in this country. There are no favors in media, because media, for you to stay there, you got to have numbers. You got to, like on the digital platform, there is this thing you call likes. And on radio and television, you got to be able to have an audience that can sustain the advertisers. So if you don't have the audience, then you are the wrong person. Your boss will fire you tomorrow morning. Your loyalty must be to the employer, but more to the audience that is listening or watching you. So that is very important. And why is it important? It is important to sustain them. And that comes to what I really want to talk about. Kidogo tu. Discipline and not be vulgar. Because when you are vulgar on radio or on television, you will have a few people. Whereas if you are not vulgar, if you are not graphic in content, you will have a father, a mother, a daughter, and a son seated and watching your show. So you must have that kind of discipline, because if you don't have that discipline, you have lost the masses who you rely on to give you revenue.
Wow, that's a very nice way to to wrap it up. Thank you very much, Uncle Fred. Now, before I give my closing remarks, I can see we are joined by senior producers from Y254 TV station, and they are very good partners. They've taken most of our students at St. Paul's, and they have shows on that youth platform. I'm so grateful to our panelists for agreeing to join us today. Thank you, Joy, Doreen, Biira, and Uncle Fred, for finding time to mentor students today. Galatians 6:9 states, never tire of doing good, for in time you will reap a harvest. Many blessings in your future engagements. Now, this is our last webinar, and I'm excited that we are ending it on a high note. I would like to sincerely appreciate our audience for having been steadfast, for attending our sessions, and for following us on YouTube. Thank you for the many messages you've sent me to appreciate the work that we are doing. I'm humbled, and may God bless all of you immensely.